We start part two of our rankings with a manager who Justin had a fair bit higher than I did. Don't worry, it's not one of the bigger disagreements in this episode. But Justin, who do we have 12th in our manager rankings?
We've got Nathan Jones at Charlton Athletic. Now, I get that Nathan Jones is a hard sell, especially to the wider audience, because he pisses people off. He loves the camera, doesn't he? That nod to the knee fall and clutches to God in the League One playoffs last season. And also, I think because of his failures with Stoke and Southampton as well, he probably, in my opinion, gets unfairly tarnished, but he's rebuilding his reputation, which justifies a mid-table finish for him here in our rankings. He's a talented manager. He is. It doesn't matter what you say about him. He is a talented manager. He gets the best out of individuals. He squeezes so much out of them in a high energy, high press system. And he's very good at navigating high stakes games, whether they're derby fixtures or playoffs. You've only got to look at the rise of Luton through the leagues, from League Two to the edge of the Premier League. And then what he's done with Charlton, I think, is actually quite an achievement as well, albeit less dramatically. He took over in 2024 in February when they were 20th, just 1 point above the bottom four at that point, and then 2 defeats in 16, saw them finish 16th. Then last season finished 4th, 10 points in the top 6, very fair finish in a very competitive League One, before skillfully, albeit boringly, navigated the playoffs, boiling the piss of many.
Yes, absolutely spot on. I don't disagree with much of what you said there, Justin. You ticked off a lot of things, actually. I think, for me personally, I'm still holding off a bit on Nathan Jones. I think the stigma that he still struggles at clubs other than Luton Town is perhaps unfairly still playing on my mind, because he looks like he's finally put that to bed. At Charlton, a club who have struggled to get out of League One for a long time, he's managed to get them back in the Championship. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he gets them to stay there either, because he's shown that when he's given time, he can take a club in the right direction. If you look at their underlying data last season, their XG was actually much better than Wrexham's. They didn't have the biggest budget in League One either and still got promoted. So he's done really well since going to Charlton. And the best thing about him is he really winds people up. Opposition fans absolutely despise him, playing up to the cameras and what have you. I think it's bloody hilarious. He is the ultimate pantomime villain now, isn't he? And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what antics he gets up to this coming season. So I like Nathan Jones. As far as the rankings go, I think I just preferred other managers ahead of him. A good season, though, and he may go flying up these rankings in 12 months' time.
Probably, and maybe as well. I think with him, there's a lot there that you need to acknowledge. His ability to turn very, not disrespectfully, very average players into good players, I think, is worth a mention. You've got to look at the likes of Amari Bell, Reece Burke, who have just re-signed for Charlton. They've had their best spells of their careers under Nathan Jones. Similarly, of players of past like Dan Potts, James Collins, Pelly, Rudikin Panzu.
By and large, anyone who was part of Luton's rise is what you're saying.
Yeah, but we might see that at Charlton. We just need probably another season to identify that. But as I say, these players have had the best spells of their careers under Nathan Jones, and that's his ability to be a good manager. It's his ability to motivate those individuals. These are the intangibles that we don't always consider. We always look at results. We always look at style of play, but actually it's what they do in the dressing room, what they do in these meetings privately to get more out of individuals that you should really acknowledge with Nathan Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to the next two managers, Justin, who we had in exactly the same place in each of our lists. In 11th place, it's the Marty Party. It's Marty Cifuentes, of course, now of Leicester City, where he was appointed this past week. If my memory serves me correctly, I think we were pretty hot on Marty Cifuentes in the rankings we did 12 months ago. He's seen himself drop a few places this year, and I think that accurately reflects what was a pretty strange season for him and QPR. They started terribly, were bottom of the league at one point, won one of their first 16 games. He nearly got sacked. Then they suddenly sprung into life for 12 games when, during that period, only Leeds and Burnley won more points than them. And then they were garbage again for the final 18 games of the season. Ultimately, they finished 15th, which is about par for where everyone expected them to finish. But their whole season centred around one run of form. It was very strange. And actually, if you look at Marty Cifuentes' time at QPR, the results do tend to be good run of form, bad run of form, good run of form, bad run of form, and so on. He appears to be a very streaky manager, but in terms of achieving goals, he did that at QPR. He kept them up in his first season when they were looking in real danger. He got them into mid-table in the second, and he did it on a pretty mediocre budget as well. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on at Leicester, considering the carnage going on behind the scenes there. But overall, yeah, Marty Cifuentes, I think mid-table in our rankings is fair.
Yeah, I think, given his streakiness is a fair, it's very mid-table, isn't it? You win a lot, you win 3 games, lose 3 games. That's pretty much been Marty Cifuentes while he's been at QPR. I think if it ended the season a little bit more positively last season at QPR, it might have been higher. But you are right. They were bottom of the table, or second bottom of the table come the end of November last season, before flirting with the playoffs come mid-Feb, which just gives you an idea of where they've been at under Marty Cifuentes at QPR. But I think the positive thing about him, and I would see this as a positive, is his ability to rip up his blueprint and start again. He wanted to be a bit more expansive at the start of last season, which is why they were playing so poorly. He went a bit more industrial. They started to get results before changing things over again. And in addition to that, he's vastly improved individuals. Jimmy Dunn has gone from a centre-back into one of the best right-backs in the league. With his size, he's got no right to do what he does, but he does it very well. And Cifuentes has given the platform. Ryan Coley, Kieran Morgan, Alfie Lloyd, Daniel Benny, all the youngsters, they got a decent amount of game time under him last season as well. They all had an impact. He had to use the youngsters, but he trusts them, he's developed them. And that's why I think we've not seen full Cifuentes yet. We've only had a taste of it. So I'm excited to see what he can deliver going forward.
Yeah. As I've said before, I think he's well up against it at Leicester because fans there are not happy with how the club is being run, and he might be the one who ends up bearing the brunt of that frustration at times. And I also don't really know what the expectations are for him next season. But when you've got a fan base who have become conditioned competing at the top end of the Premier League, will they have the patience for a season where success is looking unlikely? I've got my doubts. So yeah, he's definitely got his hands full next season. I can say that much for sure. Justin Peach, who have we got 10th in our manager rankings?
We've got Ruben Sellers, Sheffield United's new head coach. A very talented coach who has very recent success in guiding Reading away from relegation trouble, before turning them into playoff candidates in League One, before getting the Hull job, and then ultimately guiding Hull to safety in what has been a disastrous year of managerial mishaps at up in Humberside under Atron Ilachala, the owner. I think Ruben Sellers, because of the spell at Hull, not necessarily pulling up trees, but doing what was needed to be done to get them safe, I think he gets a bit of a bad rap, and obviously him getting sacked, I think, is just a ludicrous decision that I think Hull will pay for as this season progresses. Sheffield United are going to benefit from it. I rate Ruben Sellers very, very highly. In the situation at Reading, for example, not only did he prove himself to be an effective coach, but more importantly, a very, very good leader. In those moments when your teams or when your clubs are in such trouble to the point where they're on the brink of existence, you need a good spokesperson, and Ruben Sellers stepped up at every opportunity and did it with a lot of grace and a lot of humility. And I think that transpires into his coaching as well. He's a man and a coach I rate very, very highly. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree with pretty much everything you said there, Justin. I like Ruben Sellers as well, and I can't really work out what impact the Hull spell has had on his stock as a manager, because before that he was doing an unbelievable job at Reading, guided them through utter turmoil behind the scenes, but he showed he can still drag a team in the right direction despite carnage off the pitch. Sort of sounds like the kind of manager a certain team in Humberside would quite need right now. But hey, it's not like they're daft enough to sack a manager who's doing well for them, is it? Overall, the Hull spell was a rather mixed one, but it says a lot that Sheffield United saw him as a better fit for what they want to do than Chris Wilder, despite Sellers being sacked by a team who stayed up by the skin of their teeth last season. I don't have a good feeling that things are going to go well for him at Bramall Lane, but I don't think that would be his fault if it doesn't. I'm concerned fans are still mourning the loss of Chris Wilder, and so winning them around may be difficult. But whatever happens, I think I'll still rate him highly because he's shown he can manage in a crisis, maintain a good atmosphere in a group, tactically very switched on, And I'm very interested to see how he does at a club fighting for promotion like Sheffield United are.
Yeah, I sit on an optimistic side of things with Sheffield United, but the circumstances are strange in that they're reeling from the most dramatic of defeats in a playoff final. That's a big thing. Chris Wilder leaving as well, so a changing of the old guard, and then recruitment being strange.
Artificial intelligence, baby.
Yeah. Will it be a success? Maybe, but I think what they've got there is Ruben Sellers, and that will give them the best opportunity to make a really strange system of recruitment into a success if it can be. I don't think you could get probably a better manager, more open-minded manager than Ruben Sellers, and he's had more difficult situations to deal with in his career.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Let's go to number 9 in our manager rankings, and it's a new manager to the division. It's Chris Davies of Birmingham City. Now, I will admit I initially missed him off my list. I had 23 managers, and then came that difficult period afterwards where I was trying to work out who I've left out, and it took me a while before I realised, oh, it's Chris Davies. There you go. But look, a lot of people will turn their noses up at Chris Davies because he's the only thing he's done in his managerial career so far is get a Birmingham team promoted with the biggest budget League One has ever seen, and I understand that. But still, absolutely dominating the league and winning it with a record number of points is a lot easier said than done. They lost 3 games all season and averaged 67% possession. He coached that team into this relentless machine, and getting them not to take their foot off the gas at any point is, again, a lot easier said than done. If you look before that, he was a very highly regarded coach working as assistant manager under Brendan Rodgers at Celtic and Leicester. And then he was Ange Postecoglou's assistant at Spurs. So he was a very highly rated coach, and we haven't seen anything so far to suggest he's not a very good manager. So there's still question marks around him, don't get me wrong, of course. Hence why he's not higher in this list, and this coming season will be a much sterner test of how good a manager he is. But we definitely could be talking about someone here who goes on to manage at the highest level based off everything we've seen so far. That's why we've got Chris Davies fairly high in this list.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I had him 12th in my own individual list. I want to see a full season of Championship football behind him to fully judge him. You know, a season where he's had the most resources League One has ever seen is a difficult one, but I think it's right to praise him for that relentlessness, because that's a very difficult thing to do, trying to maintain momentum, trying to maintain energy in a season like that, especially, you know, when you win the league at a canter. You look at Liverpool as a great example. They were partying for weeks. They took their foot off their gas, and their form towards the end of the season was pretty poor. But Chris Davies obviously didn't allow that for Birmingham. He wanted the best possible season he could have, albeit a defeat in the EFL Trophy. You know, he's a very talented coach. Can it be translated into Championship? Maybe. I know Birmingham fans will say, well, they set the points record in League One. They won the most points ever. Kenny Jackett's done the same thing, and so too has Chris Powell. It's not a measurable variable for Championship football. So having a season in Championship where we can fully judge Chris Davies, I think is where we need to be.
No, I think that's absolutely fair, Justin. There's plenty of reasons to still have your question marks about him, but I think people will underestimate how turning Birmingham into the winning machine that they were is a much more difficult thing to do than people will realise. And also getting the best out of every player there as well is another difficult thing to do. But we've seen plenty of evidence that he's just a very, very switched on coach. And it seems like that is translating into being a brilliant manager as well. And he could really, really catch a lot of eyes this season with the work that he does at Birmingham City, especially if they have as good a season as a lot of people are expecting them to do. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I need everyone to buckle up, because Justin and I may end up scrapping over the next 10 minutes of this episode, because it's all been very well mannered so far. And the reason I've given that warning is because the next manager is the one who we had the joint second biggest difference of opinion on in each of our rankings. That's because I had him 13th in my list. Justin had him 3rd. Who is it, Justin Peach?
It's Gary Rowett of Oxford United.
In 8th place, I should say, as well.
In 8th place.
Gary Rowett, 8th.
I think why? Why would you have him so mid? He's not mid. Gary Rowett is anything but mid. This isn't going to be an impassioned defence of Gary Rowett. I'm going to relay some good information here that will present a decent argument. He kept Oxford in the Championship last season, a massive achievement considering budget, squad depth, squad quality. Mark Harris was their main striker for the entirety of the season. They stayed up. He wasn't a goal scorer by any means. And this is on top of what I judge to be sustained success in the Championship with low budgets. Style obviously goes out the window with Gary Rowett, but he will do a good job. I think he's become slightly unfashionable because of that style of play, it not being progressive, but he established Millwall outside the playoffs. He's on his way to establishing Oxford as a Championship team. He got Derby into the top 6, should have done with the resources anyway, but he had Birmingham knocking on the door all those years ago as well. We know that story. I'm aware Stoke fans will be going, wow, he didn't do very well with us. You were only a few points off the top 6 and you've not seen heights like that since. So maybe it wasn't all that bad under Gaza. I think Gary Rowett is an underrated manager at Championship level. I think you're underrating him as well. I think he deserves a hell of a lot more respect than he gets. And I think any manager who has him has a shot of exceeding expectations.
Okay. I don't disagree with a lot of what you say there, Justin. It's just not really justification for putting him third. And look, I don't want to come across as me hating Guy Rowett, because I don't. He's a very nice man. I interviewed him just over a year ago and he was absolutely lovely. And having him 13th obviously doesn't mean I don't rate him. It's just if you gave me a free choice of every manager in the league, I wouldn't choose him ahead of 21 other managers. And look, he did a great job last season of keeping Oxford up. They looked like they were on a one-way course to relegation when he came in, and despite a wobble near the end of the season, they stayed up with one of the smallest budgets in the league, possibly even the smallest. And everywhere he's been before that, he's done, at the very least, a good job, apart from Stoke, of course. And that's a very redeemable quality to have as a manager. I guess my big issue is he hasn't been anywhere and done an outstanding job. At just about every club, he's met expectation and maybe slightly more in some cases, but little more than that. That's why I find you putting him third in your list a bit mad, particularly ahead of a lot of managers who I could see managing in the Premier League at some point. If we're choosing managers based on how much we would want them at our club, I would want someone with a lot of potential to take my club places. Gary Rowett for me is Mr. Steady Eddie, which, again, is not a bad thing, but it wouldn't excite me as much as several other managers in this list.
But I think with that, you're looking at potential, whereas if I want success, and as I say, this hypothetical club that we speak about when choosing these managers is, what does success look like? If you've got an Oxford, for example, who want to establish themselves as a Championship club, that's a significant success. It's not steady. He's having to exceed expectations. Similarly with Millwall becoming an established Championship club to then progressing to be a playoff flirter, if you like, I think that is, again, exceeding expectations because you've got to take into account budget. He's laid a solid platform for them to build on, albeit a bad spell under Joe Edwards and then Neil Harris picking it back up again. But ultimately, I think a lot of their establishment now in the Championship is down to Gary Rowett. Similarly with Birmingham all those years ago, it took a while for them to get over it until finding success now.
Everything you're saying there is absolutely spot on, but still putting him, saying you choose him ahead of 21 other managers is just what I can't get my head around, because you've got plenty of managers here who could take you to the promised land and, really overachieve with your club because they've got a lot of potential and a lot of promise that they've shown so far. And Gary Rowett, yes, hits the nail on the head every time he gets a job at a club. But if you're looking for someone who's going to overachieve and take you places, Gary Rowett's not that man.
I disagree because I think he does overachieve. Taking places is another question.
Give me a club where he's overachieved.
Millwall. Oxford.
I think Millwall fans will strongly disagree with you on that, considering he was there for, 3-4 years and didn't get a playoff place? Surely if you're Millwall, then you're looking at a playoff place and that's overachieving.
I think they've been around lower mid-table, and then getting into the top 10 I think has been a significant achievement. Again, you've got to take budget into account. I think keeping Oxford in the Championship is an overachievement, because by all means they should have been relegated last season because of their form at the time Gary Rowett came in.
But the goal at the start of the season was to stay up. It wasn't like that would be achievement, not overachievement. Overachievement is where you take your goal at the start of the season and completely surpass that.
I think that's slightly muddying expectations there. But with Gary Rowett, I think as well, something else you've got to take into account is there's not a more tactically flexible manager in the league. I think he's paved the way for a lot of managers to do it, like your John Eustace, like your John Mousinho's, to be fluid in changing to your opposition. I think Gary Rowett is very, very good at that. He's very in tune with that. He swaps his formations regularly. He can go from a 4-2-3-1 to a 3 or a 5 at the back. I think that's something you got to give him credit for. He's a results-based manager, which is why I don't think he's fashionable. But if you want success, and if you want sustained success, and a manager who has a history of it, Gary Rowett's there.
I mean, he was there at Millwall and just hit top half finish repeatedly. It's not, taking your club to the next level, which, as I say, is what a load of other managers here. I think the problem is that I have with some of your picks is it feels like you look too much in the past when it comes to a manager, when you could be looking towards the future and what they could be, because, as I say, there's a lot of managers in the Championship right now who I could see managing in the Premier League at some point, possibly with the club they're at right now if they're given time. And Rowett is a steady hand, but putting him ahead of many of them I find odd. We'll leave that there, though. And, ladies and gents, if you think that conversation just got a bit heated, the worst is yet to come, because this, ladies and gentlemen, is the manager we had the biggest discrepancy over in the whole of these rankings. In 7th place, we have Will Still of Southampton. And the reason for that discrepancy is because I had Will Still second in my list. So for his final position in our joint list to be 7th, you can only imagine how low Justin Peach had him. Wherever you think he put him, it was lower than that. That's all I'll say.
I might be underselling it, and I think you might be overselling it. So I think 7th is probably quite fair. But why have you got him second?
Well, I'll tell you why I've got him second, because I look at Will Still, right? Will Still is coming to the Championship with rave reviews after the work he's done in France. At the age of 29, he took over at Rennes, a pretty small club in France, guided them to back-to-back mid-table finishes, despite constantly having their best players sold. As soon as he left, they got relegated. Kind of gives you an idea of how much he was helping them prop them up. And then he went to Lens, a much bigger club, who again sold all their best players and managed to replicate the season before, despite having lesser tools to work with. In terms of the underlying data, they're actually performing a lot better than they were where they finished, and performing better than teams with much bigger budgets than Lens as well. And the reason he left Lens was entirely down to personal reasons, which we won't get into here, but it was purely of his own free will. So he's done a cracking job already in his short career. He seems very switched on, very flexible tactically, and he's got an exceptional record of developing players under him. But the standout thing for me, and this is a really, really big thing here, it's easy to forget how young he is, because he's been talked about for such a long time. But when he takes charge of his first game at Southampton, he'll become the youngest manager in Championship history. That's how young he is. He's essentially a managerial prodigy. So we're talking about someone here who could very well become an elite manager based off everything that he's achieved already in his managerial career. And so if you're a Championship club, like Southampton obviously are, you absolutely have to be getting him in if the chance presents itself. That's why I rate Will Still so incredibly highly.
So a lot of what you said about Will Still does translate to Julien Stéphan, who also had a lot of success in France, also developed players. So why would Will Still be second in your eyes and Julien Stéphan quite low?
I actually have Julien Stéphan quite high in my list, actually. Okay. But Will Still, as I say, it's purely based on age, because we're looking at someone here who could be an elite coach. And that's why I had him second in my list. There's a handful of managers who I'm sure we'll get onto in due course who I think could be elite managers, and he is very, very much amongst them. which is why I don't understand why you had him so very low in your list, Justin.
Yeah, so the reason why I had him 14th for full disclosure is I'm just being cautious with him. I'm just being very, very cautious with him. I think with Will Still, with him being so young, we need to go and see him go through some sort of really tough periods where it's high pressure. Has he really been through that as a coach yet? Argument is there for Lance. But again, how much is media hype and how much is him actually being a very, very effective coach? That might be a bit harsh, but it's very easy to get swayed by a lot of the positive stories that we've heard about Will Still, by a lot of his interviews, by a lot of his appearances on Sky Sports. Very easy to be swayed by it. So what I want to do is, it's a very boring answer. I want to see what he's capable of. In addition to that, he's overseeing one of the worst Premier League teams in history. That comes with a lot of difficulties, I think, where you've got to have new levels of leadership to drag players out of a lull. We saw with Luton losing a lot of games in the Premier League. It can hang over you and impact you in the Championship as you come down. We've seen it with several other teams. Sheffield United have been impacted by it as well. You need good leaders. So not only do you need to be a very good coach, you need to be a good leader. So again, we need to see that side of Will Still. So a lot of what it is I need to see evidence, as it is with Julien Stéphan, as it is with Petzolano at Watford as well. I need to see how they're going to transfer their skills from abroad in the Championship, because it's a difficult league that can eat you up.
I think that's absolutely fair, Justin. I think everything you've said there is absolutely fair. What I would say is, if you had the chance, if you're running a hypothetical Championship club and you had the chance to get Will Still in, you absolutely have to do it because of the amount of promise that he's shown already in his career. What absolutely astounded me was some of the managers you had Will Still below. I don't want to reveal them just yet because I don't want to genuinely impact our reputation as the number one Championship podcast.
This is an important thing that we need to consider. When I'm picking these, I'm not looking at what my manager can do in the Premier League. I want Championship success. I want to get out of the Championship. I want to stay in the Championship. Can a manager do that? The managers that I've selected over Will Still and any other manager, I believe that they can, which is why I've got Gary Rowett so high on my list, is because I know I'm going to get some form of success, some form of meeting and exceeding.
Let me interrupt you there, Justin. Who's going to be managing at a higher level in 5 years' time, Will Still or Gary Rowett?
That's irrelevant in this list for this season, though.
Not necessarily, because you're looking at someone who could take your club to the next level if their managerial, their career, the current trajectory keeps going at the rate it is.
But a lot can happen in 5 years. Say Will Still finishes fourth with Southampton, loses the playoff final, gets poached by, bloody Celtic because Brendan Rodgers has gone gallivanting off again. And then he has success with Celtic, and then he gets poached by another big European team. I don't think that argument can be really relayed here, mainly because you've got to look at what success can look like this season. And as we discussed in the last episode, I will pick my managers based on what I deem to be previous success.
Yeah, but that's what I just don't understand. I think, as I say, you're relying too much on previous success to be what you judge these managers on, when you could have someone who, at the start of a project like Southampton are, because they're having a big reset, he could take them, he could take them places ultimately.
Could do.
And that's why I look at, obviously could do, but I definitely think he's got more of a chance of doing it than Gary Rowett, Mark Robbins, former Southampton manager Nathan Jones.
Blasphemy.
I'm sure that'll go down well with Southampton fans. And the one that astounded me most of all, Paul Heckingbottom.
Yeah, man who's been promoted from the Championship.
Are you being serious?
He's been promoted from the Championship.
So you're in charge of a football club and you'd rather have Paul Heckingbottom in charge than Will Still?
I don't think it's a rather have.
I cannot emphasise this enough. That is literally the point of this list.
Like I said, if I'm choosing a manager who's had success, and it's not an absolute like you're putting out, because there are a lot of variables to consider. If I want a manager who is delivered promotion from the Championship, Paul Heckingbottom has done that. So I would consider it very, very highly.
For anyone who's listening to the audio version of this podcast right now, I've got my head in my hands. Yeah, we'll have
I
a
think
break.
firstly, I'm not suggesting Will Still is worse manager than any of these. It's just a case of I want success, so I want a manager who has had success at championship level.
I'm starting to judge whether you do want success.
I'm Gino Potsu. I want to get promoted and then change my manager.
We'll have a break. After that, we'll have our top 6. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. This is the manager rankings, and we're now on to our top 6. We'll just pretend the past few minutes didn't happen. Let's go to the manager who we have 6th in our list. And this next one may surprise a few people, actually, who don't follow the Championship that regularly, but he's someone who we both regard very highly, Justin.
We've got John Mousinho of Portsmouth. Tactical flexibility, fluid teams, exceeding expectations, growing individuals. I think he's got all of the credentials to be a very top level coach and top level manager. He does. He's still very young. And as well as that, you've got to consider Portsmouth and their position and their budget coming from League One. We talk a lot about the gap between the Premier League and the Championship growing, but that's also the case with the Championship and League One. Now, all 3 League One teams that were promoted in the 23-24 season stayed up last season, but Portsmouth really did stay up. If you can stay up really good, they stayed up really good. They were bottom of the Championship in November last season. Come the end of the season, it was a very comfortable finish away from danger. They achieved their goal. In addition to that, I think they were one of the most hard done by injuries. Had to shuffle their defence around a lot. We're without Colby Bishop for long periods of last season, Callum Lang as well, 2 very important attacking players. Josh Murphy, I think, is another fine example, again, of what Mousinho can do with individuals, because he had a season of the best season of his career so far. There's just a lot of ticks in the box, a lot of green flags with John Mousinho. Very hard to find faults right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a very short managerial career so far for Mousinho, but what he's done already has been remarkable. He was the man who finally got Portsmouth out of League One. It took them 7 years, and he was the one who finally did it. And then last season, he, as you say, managed to keep them up very comfortably in the end. And Pompey had an awful start in terms of the fixture schedule, but he managed to steer that ship back into steady waters. And they did it by playing some really entertaining football along the way as well. The way he's turned careers around, most notably, of course, Josh Murphy has been sublime. Callum Lang, Andre Giselle, both worth mentioning in that regard too. But the main thing is he managed to comfortably keep Portsmouth up with a bottom 3 budget. It's very impressive considering that was only his 2nd full season in management. That's how short his managerial career so far has been. And I completely forgot about the number of injuries that had last season, just in the absolute right. So flag that up as well. Still only 39 too. I think this is a manager with a very bright future.
Yeah, bright future probably undersells it. But, just going back off of my sort of debate around sort of the Will Still, he's got a lot of potential, but, he's shown that he can deliver in the here and now as well. Again, I think keeping Portsmouth in the Championship in the current climate, I think is a big achievement. They are a big club, but you've got to look at budget, you've got to look at recruitment. They're not spending mountains of cash. Mousinho has worked with what he's got, and again, the injury issues are massive. How often did he have to shuffle his defence? Marlon Pack was playing centre back for long periods of last season.
Yeah,
Marlon Pack, a cart horse. No disrespect to him, he does not move quickly. He's 34. He's a midfielder. Playing centre back, he shuffled it around a lot. Even losing Rob Atkinson, a period last season, he needed to shuffle again in a period where they needed results to get away from relegation trouble. So, yeah, John Mousinho's got a very high ceiling, but also he can deliver in the here and now, which is important.
I've got a sneaky feeling Marlon Pack listens to this podcast, and if he
I'm
did,
sorry, Marlon.
If he did, I don't think he does anymore. But,
listen,
it's been said now.
If you're slow, you're slow. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'm not sure he'll necessarily disagree, but look at us, Justin, finally agreeing on some managers. I'm glad we've got past all that hardship that happened just a minute ago. Let's move on to 5th place. Oh God, in 5th place, we've got Alex Neil of Millwall. This was another one with a big discrepancy between the two of us. Justin, I had Alex Neil 11th. Justin Peach, get this, ladies and gentlemen, Justin Peach had Alex Neil 2nd. 2nd. Wow. Go on, Justin. What do you say to all those eyebrows being raised across Britain as we speak?
Alex Neil, I think, is one of the most intelligent managers, head coaches in the Championship. I really, really do. He identifies the weaknesses very, very quickly, plugs them, and then starts to get your teams rising up the table. When he took over Preston, he identified they were conceding too many goals. Their XG against dropped significantly. They were keeping teams out, and then they started to build again, and we saw even individuals in that team grow and grow under his tutelage to a point where Preston should have sold them for a healthy profit, but because of really bad management at the top, they didn't. And that shouldn't be a reflection on Alex Neil. Doesn't do that sort of thing. But if they did, they'd have made a lot more money than they did, and maybe could have reinvested it to push Preston into the top 6 rather than stagnate. So there's an element of Alex Neil, I think, being hard done by, and I think that translates to his spell at Stoke as well, because it's important to really ignore that, because Stoke they're a dumpster fire upstairs, and I think that impacts managers downstairs. He achieved promotion with Sunderland. He got rid of that playoff hoodoo, which I think has given them a good platform for success. But if you're still a Sunderland listener, I'm not going to dwell on that too long, because I know he is a bit of a snake. That's by the by. I think taking over in Millwall, he's done a lot to change perceptions at Millwall. He spoke very early on about needing to change fans' views. A lot of fans were getting frustrated at them being a little bit more possession-based, not in the style that they're being very progressive, but killing games, keeping the ball between them. Fans were getting frustrated, and Alex Neil was very forthright that they need to do this to make that next step. I think tactically he's an outstanding coach as well. And as I say, his intelligence is important. He improves individuals, track record at at Preston, and hopefully at Millwall over the next year.
I mean, yeah, I, again, was nodding along with a lot of everything you said there, Justin. It just, yeah, second place, wow. And again, I don't want people thinking I don't rate Alex Neil. I obviously have a lot of respect for him if I ranked him 11th. But saying you choose him over every manager in the division, bar one, yeah, that is some take. I'm trying to toe the party line, because I do think he is underrated by a lot of fans. Not that underrated, though. That is extraordinary, and you've explained it there. I still don't really understand the justification for putting him second. But look, Alex Neil did a sterling job at Millwall last season. He came in, took them from 13th, had them properly challenging for the playoffs. Before that, he was at Stoke, where he didn't do very well, but show me a manager who has done well at Stoke in the past 8 years. And then, absolutely right, before that, he got Sunderland finally promoted from League One. And then you go back to when he was at Preston, when, on the whole, he did a great job as well. He's done a great job at almost every club, bar Stoke, which is why I think he's underrated. It's a very good quality to have, doing a great job at almost every club you've been at. On the other hand, he's another one who I think you could say, has he ever overachieved at a club? I'd struggle to argue it. The only season I can think of where you can make a case for him overachieving is his first one at Preston, which was a long time ago now. And even then, they only finished 4 places higher than where they finished the season before. So, yeah, again, similar to Gary Rowett, really. Does Alex Neil overachieve? I don't think so. So putting him second in your list is very, very puzzling, Justin.
I think when you look at the list, I'm not going to give anything away of the managers that are currently above Alex Neil in our list. But if you look at the cohort of managers in the Championship this season, there are a lot of managers who are just on their way up. They're just on the way up. You know, Ruben Sellers, for example, just starting to find his way in the Championship. Similarly with managers coming from abroad in your Paolo Pezzolano, Sergei Shekarovic and Julian Stefan, even Will Still. So there are a lot of unknowns. Chris Davis going into his second full season, first at Championship level. So for me, it was a lot easier picking Alex Neil higher, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the managers that are below it. And that's not to say that they're not very good. They're just, I know what I'm getting with Alex Neil. I know what I'm getting.
But is what you're getting not great?
I don't think it's about that. But he's never had an opportunity to spend.
What is it about? What's the point in football, Justin, if it's not about success?
It is about success, but what amount of resource has Alex Neil had? I think this is the first year we're going to see Alex Neil really unlock the potential of a team, because Millwall are starting to invest a hell of a lot in their squad. They've got a young base. I'm not giving too much away. I quite fancy them this year. And that's not because of Millwall's squad. It's because of Alex Neil.
I get thinking Alex Neil is a good manager. And as I say, I think he's underrated compared to what the general consensus will be amongst Championship fans. But putting just one manager ahead of him, you choose him ahead of every other manager in the Championship, bar one, is what I just can't get my head around. It's just coming across that you love mediocrity, because Gary Rowett and Alex Neil are great at achieving, their goals in a season. But if you want anything above that, you're not getting it, quite frankly. It's as simple as that. You look at other managers, they can take their club that they're at right now to the Premier League. Absolutely, loads of them can. A lot of the ones I've had ahead of Alex Neil.
Though? How can you measure that? Because they haven't done it.
They haven't done it yet, but Alex Neil hasn't done it either.
No, but we talk about Championship success, and this is what I'm basing my list on. It's not wrong. It's not incorrect. It's what I want my managers to be. I want success at Championship level, and I want a manager who still has some element of unlocked potential, which I think Alex Neil has, which is why I've picked him on.
But Alex Neil's potential compared to someone like Will Still,
who's done nothing at Championship level.
Because he hasn't been in the Championship yet.
Exactly. So how can I properly judge him?
So just so we've got a complete and proper understanding of what's going on here, if you were in charge of a club, you're telling me you would choose Alex Neil over Will Still?
We've already had this debate with Paul Heckingbottom. Yes, he's ahead of Will Still. Get over it.
For the audio listeners, I have once again got my head in my hands. Yeah. I'm just the comment section's going to judge you, Justin, is all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say any more. We'll let the listeners do the talking for me, because we could be here for a long time if we carried on. Let's go on to manager 4, Justin. Who have we got 4th place in our manager rankings?
We've got Liam Manning in Norwich. There's a lot to like about Liam Manning. Finishing the playoffs might not be quite enough to convince me that he's should be higher. But I think tactically we've seen, especially last season with Bristol City, a decent amount of flexibility. We spoke about John Mousinho having to deal with a lot of injuries. Liam Manning had to do the same as well. But he's very good at working with what he's got and putting out a very attractive style of play. Last season, having Narky Wells as your main goal scorer is a good example from a striking position. So too is turning Jason Knight into one of the best midfielders in the Championship, getting a lot out of Anis Mehmeti, where maybe previous managers have struggled. I think his style provides a platform for individuals to excel. I feel there's much more to come with Liam Manning, with more resource at his disposal. So again, Norwich is going to be a really good acid test to see whether or not he is worth the hype. But a really good platform to build on at Bristol City. Strong, finishing in the top 6, great. Bruising defeat. I know we marked Lampard down, if you like, for his performance in the playoffs. And again, if I'm choosing to judge Liam Manning, I probably did the same for his performance in the playoffs against Sheffield United.
Yeah, sorry, I just need a moment because I'm still quite hot after the whole Alex Neil bit. I've got a very hot head now all of a sudden. But yeah, Liam Manning, that's what we're talking about here. Yeah, there's a lot to like with Liam Manning. Firstly, he's coming off the back of a manager of the season contender campaign at Bristol City. Their first playoff finish in the Championship in 17 years. A remarkable achievement. And he's undoubtedly taken the club to a new level. You go back over what he's done previously, getting Oxford competing for automatic promotion in League One, ditto with MK Dons. Everywhere he's gone, he's done a cracking job. And he's done it all while playing attractive, progressive football. But he's also more than happy to mix it up. Several players have massively benefited from working under him. Jason Knight, Max Bird, Anis Mehmeti. And that's at Bristol City alone. Could go through the other clubs he's worked at too. He just ticks an awful lot of boxes, and he's still only 39. He's achieved so much already, and now he's at Norwich, his hometown club. It is his 5th club in 4 years, so hopefully this is the one where he can finally settle. But ultimately, Liam Manning will almost certainly be the best bit of business Norwich do this summer.
Yeah. I think so. I think the only reason why I stumble a little bit is because there's a lot of expectation now at Norwich, where I don't think he's had to deal with that a hell of a lot in his previous jobs. With Bristol City, was the expectation to finish in the top 6? No, it's to push into it, definitely, and grow. Similarly with Oxford, guiding them to survival. MK Dons, again, pushing for the top 6. Was it ever wasn't ever on the cards, despite budgets, etc. So Norwich is the one where you're getting a hell of a lot of money thrown at the squad, comes with pressures. You've got to develop those players. And in addition to that, you've got to deliver what I would say is a top 6 finish at the very least to justify that spend. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant with Liam Manning. That being said, it's not to mark him down. I think he did a terrific job at Bristol City. I would like to have seen him carry that on, but he's got a chance to start again. You mentioned the amount of clubs he's been at in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not to mark him down, but to have sustained success, I think you need to stay at a club.
Everything you say there, I'm just now comparing it to what you were saying about Alex Neil, and it's really, really affecting my headspace right now. Nonetheless, we'll move on. Because in third place, this is the manager who we ranked third in terms of how much we would want them in charge of our club. It is Danny Rule of Sheffield Wednesday. What a strange career Danny Rule is having. We'll have a quick chat about the latest carnage at Sheffield Wednesday very shortly. But as far as this list goes, I believe Danny Rule still has everything that it takes to be an elite manager. His coaching pedigree is superb, having learnt the ropes at RB Leipzig, Bayern Munich, and the German national team. And what he's done at Sheffield Wednesday, despite what's going on off the pitch, has been brilliant. In his first season, pulled off the most remarkable escape I can ever remember in the Championship. And then last season, it's easy to forget that Sheffield Wednesday were very much in the conversation for the playoffs in the first half of the season, and then everything fell apart as Danny Rule's relationship with Chansiri drastically began to deteriorate and the off-the-pitch issues became more prevalent. Ultimately, if he was at another club, which may happen soon, I'm sure we'd see Danny Rule flourish into this top-class manager. In the meantime, we haven't seen anything to suggest otherwise at Sheffield Wednesday, because any misgivings that happen there, you usually have to caveat it with Chansiri.
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room, or the Chansiri in the room, which actually is probably more fitting. It's a difficult one to judge, but I don't think you should mark Danny Rule down because of the current circumstances at Wednesday. I think actually you've got to admire how much he's trying to get away from his employer, Chansiri. Not Sheffield Wednesday, he's trying to get away from Chansiri. And I think if his contract situation wasn't as complex as it is, i.e. the high compensation, I do think he would have been poached by one or two clubs. If Leicester had a bit more leeway in terms of their financial situation, I'm sure they would have gone for Danny Rule over Marty Cifuentes. It's not to mark Marty Cifuentes down by any means, but that man had to pay half of his compensation, for example, to get Leicester job. So it goes to show the situation there. So as I say, I think he would have been poached. But whether he's at Sheffield Wednesday or not, he's a very, very talented coach. He's very, very driven to the identity that he wants to play. He wants to play with high press. He wants to get into opposition faces. But again, he's very good at developing individuals. That's really important. Anthony Masaba, Jody Gassama are two players that have thrived under him, albeit have had inconsistent spells, but so took Sheffield Wednesday. He's done a lot with a squad that generally had no right to be having, I wouldn't say the success that they had, but finishing in the Championship in that first season was incredible. Finishing mid-table in the Championship last season, a very, very good job. So again, if I'm looking at managers overachieving, I think he's done that at Sheffield Wednesday. He really, really has. Oh,
he absolutely has. And as I said a second ago, it's easy to forget they were competing for the playoffs in the first half of the season. So with a bit of investment, which is what he so obviously wanted in January and didn't get, maybe seeing the reasons why now he didn't get that, then who knows where Wednesday could have actually finished this season. But a quick diversion from the managerial rankings, Justin, because it's now being reported that it's not set in stone that Danny Rule will be the Sheffield Wednesday manager going forwards, for God's sake. It's after claims that several players are not happy about him returning after he was negotiating his release. This comes after reports that there was finally progress happening on a takeover, but that's now off. Oh, and the home kit has been released and it appears to have word art on it. Yeah, everything is moving so quickly at Sheffield Wednesday, Justin, that everything looked like it was finally heading in the right direction, and now it's all gone to pot very quickly. So here's something that won't go out of date as soon as this episode is released. What an absolute mess this continues to be.
Yeah, everything's moving quickly apart from the takeover, apparently. So even that's slowed down a little bit. It's a strange situation, and I fully understand why players would feel a little bit hesitant because of those circumstances. But again, Chansiri demanding a man to cut short his holiday, etc. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing. And, would you want to work under Chansiri, Ryan? Yes or no?
No.
There you go. That's it. If you were employed by Chansiri, you'd try very hard to get away from him as well. I have sympathy for Danny Rule, but I also understand the players' positions as well. I think for the maybe the good of Danny Rule and the club, he needs to depart. That being said, I think having a very talented manager as an asset is a good thing for Wednesday to have at the moment.
Yeah, I don't really know what the way forward is now, because this is the most astonishing summer a Championship club has ever had. And I mean that in all the wrong ways, obviously. As far as the takeover goes, it seems like there's a lot of people interested. Some of the parties linked so far seem questionable. And then with regards to Danny Rule, I can understand why there's a bit of resentment towards him, but the reason he wanted to leave wasn't anything to do with Sheffield Wednesday. It's because he hates Chansiri. Why would anyone want to work with him? If he was my boss, I'd flee the country. So I think the best thing everyone can do is just pull together and try to salvage what is setting up to be a horror show of a season. That may not happen now, because it looks like Danny Rule may be heading out the door after all. So, yeah. Carnage, as always, at Sheffield Wednesday. Anyway, back onto the rankings. And we're now on to our top two, Justin. And in second place, we've got the man who won last season's second tier Manager of the Season.
It's John Eustace at Derby County. Now, before anyone gets on the high horse, this isn't bias. John Eustace is a very, very good manager, and a manager that has a high ceiling at current trajectory. There's a lot to like about him. I think just putting it out there, we have to mention it. Him putting Blackburn into a position of being a top six team deserves a hell of a lot of credit, because by right, they shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been with their budget, with the mess of recruitment, with the lack of investment that has been well spoken about by now. It needs to be pointed out. And then going to Derby and keeping that team up was truly astonishing. Watching Derby very closely, they were dreadful. Some of the worst football seen at championship level under Paul Warne. Didn't improve drastically under John Eustace, but it became very results driven. He shored up the defence even more than it was, and they started to grind things out and became very results based. Really, really important. Again, you're looking at managers who are very good at identifying weaknesses. Eustace did that and started to rectify them very, very, very quickly. So yeah, John Eustace, very good tactician, very flexible, very fluid in his approach, can adapt to opposition. There's a lot to like about Johnny Boy.
Yeah, just for clarity, if anyone's wondering how John Eustace is second when neither of us had him second in our respective lists, it's because we each had such contrasting views on the managers. The other one had second, and so Eustace was the next highest one, who we both agreed on. Just getting that admin out of the way. But yeah, you know what? I think when we've done these rankings in the past, I didn't rate John Eustace that highly because I thought he perhaps had a ceiling in the Championship. But the more you see the work he's done in the Championship at various different clubs on very limited budgets, the more I think, actually, maybe he could manage at a higher level than this. Last season was astonishing. He did two manager of the season worthy jobs at two different clubs. Firstly, taking a Blackburn side who many were tipping to be fighting to stay up and getting them competing for a playoff place despite having one of the lowest budgets in the league, and then taking over at Derby midway through the season, and at one point they were bottom, 4 points from safety, looking awful, and Eustace completely turned them around, winning 6 of their final 11 games and managing to keep them up. And then before that, he of course got a Birmingham team sat in the playoffs who would go on to be relegated after he was sacked. That's how bad they were. So he's massively overachieved at his last 3 clubs. He is brilliant at getting the best out of players. There's plenty of examples about that. He comes across incredibly well when talking to the media. I'm struggling to find negatives when it comes to John Eustace as a manager, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, putting these rankings together, it's very easy when they come off the back of success. There is that recency bias, but I don't think you can really tar John Eustace with that brush. Mainly because of the things that you've said. But if you go back to his time at Birmingham, at the time of his sacking, they were in and around the playoffs. Them going down wasn't down to John Eustace being sacked; it was down to some really poor decision making, but I think that Birmingham team had a very good chance of finishing in the top 10 because of John Eustace, because of his ability to get more out of the individuals at his disposal. And it's the same thing with Blackburn. Last season, we're forgetting that he kept them up in the season that he came in. That's worth bearing in mind. Obviously, that late goal of Sammy Schmoldix against Leicester, a very important moment in the season for Blackburn. Could have been a very different story if he didn't put that in the back of the net. And again, the success of guiding a team to the verge of the playoffs in Blackburn, and then very bravely taking this step to try and guide a team out of the bottom three. It's an incredible, it's incredible decision making. But he's a very, very good manager. And his football's not one dimensional. He can mix it up, and that's really, really important as well.
Yeah. As a Derby fan, I'd never thought I'd be sat here with the Derby manager second in these annual rankings. The only other managers I had ahead of him were obviously the guy we've got number one, who everyone's probably guessed at this point, and will still. Otherwise, I genuinely would not trade John Eustace for any other manager in the division. And I genuinely don't think this is my club bias playing a part here, even if Eustace did the same thing he did last season but kept up, I don't know, Cardiff. I would still be thinking exactly the same thing. That's how highly we both rate John Eustace, actually. This is it. This is the number one manager in our manager rankings for the 2025-26 season. And as I say, I imagine a lot of people have probably guessed it right now. But it is, of course, Kieran McKenna of Ipswich Town. I did wonder when I made this list, is Justin going to try and piss me off by putting someone else at number one? But fortunately, we both agreed on this one, Justin.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I've not got too much to say about it. I think he's there by default. Is he not?
He's got to be. He just simply has to be, doesn't he? I don't think... I basically started my list by putting him number one, but I'll explain why he's number one on both of our behalves, I guess. Why is Kieran McKenna number one? Because he's by far the best manager in the Championship. No one else really comes close. He should be managing in the Premier League. Everyone knows it, and I don't think there's a single Ipswich fan who would be bitter if he did leave because of everything that he's done for their club. When he took over, they were in League One. He got them promoted, and then what followed was what I genuinely consider to be the greatest managerial achievement in Championship history, in getting Ipswich promoted again to the Premier League. Considering the budget they had compared to the other teams in the top four that season, it simply has to be. And then he gave just about as good account of himself in the Premier League as you can probably do nowadays for the manager of a newly promoted side. So his record speaks for itself, really. Stylistically, he plays some of the nicest football you'll see at this level. It's not possession for possession's sake. It is art sometimes. And the development of players, it must be the best of any manager I can think of at this level. How he's been able to get so many players excelling all at once, like we saw in their Championship promotion, is beyond me. And as soon as a job is available at any Premier League club next season, he will be linked with it. And when I say any, I mean any. Even right at the top of the Premier League, he will be linked with that job, because Kieran McKenna is destined to be an elite manager. I just hope he stays at Ipswich for one more season so he can give them the ultimate parting gift.
It's going to be interesting to see how the season progresses, because Brentford are a really good example of, I maybe don't think that will last very long with Keith Andrews, and that might raise some question marks about Kieran McKenna's future. But all that does is serve to really, really highlight the quality of coach Kieran McKenna is. I think one thing that you do need to really sort of shine on Kieran McKenna is the achievement of going from League One to the Premier League back to back. It's statistically very difficult to do. Only two teams before Ipswich did it. It's incredible, isn't it? And that's something that you do hang on for a while, because, as you pointed out, I'll judge managers on their past and their ability in the Championship and what they've achieved in the Championship. Clearly, my MO for picking these. McKenna's got a season where he vastly overachieved, massively, incredibly so. And he did it with a League One team. Maybe you can argue the recruitment in the Premier League let them down a little bit, but they had to start again because they had to recruit a team that had potential to reach the Premier League in future years, if you like. Whether Kieran McKenna is going to be the man to do that in years gone by, in years to come, is another question. But what you've got there, as I said, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, he's there by default. He is by far the best coach in the Championship this coming season.
Yeah, this was the easiest position in the whole of these rankings, wasn't it? Not much really to say about that because, as we say, it just kind of speaks for itself, really. And I remember a couple of years ago when I put Kieran McKenna top of my managerial rankings. I can't remember if we both agreed on that in the end. There was a lot of blowback around that decision. I don't think we'll have the same blowback on that particular position this year. Other positions, maybe we will. But we've finished on one that we both agree with, ladies and gents, in what has been a very topsy-turvy manager rankings this season. And there we have it, the 2025-26 managerial rankings. We'll have a quick recap, Justin, starting from the very bottom of our manager rankings. In 24th place, we have Phil Parkinson of Wrexham. Who have we got 23rd, Justin?
23rd, we've got Sergej Jakirovic at Hull City.
22nd is Paolo Pezzolano of Watford.
21st, we've got Valérien Ismaël at Blackburn.
20th is Gerhard Struber of Bristol City.
In 19th, we've got Ryan Mason at West Brom.
18, Alan Sheehan of Swansea City.
In 17th, we've got Paul Heckingbottom at Preston.
16th, Frank Lampard, Coventry City.
In 15th, we've got Mark Robbins at Stoke.
14th is Julian Stefan of Queen's Park Rangers.
In 13th, we've got Rob Edwards at Middlesbrough.
Onto the top half, Nathan Jones of Charlton Athletic is 12th.
We've got the Marty Party at Leicester in 11th.
At 10th place, we've got Ruben Sellers of Sheffield United.
In 9th, we've got Chris Davis at Birmingham.
8 is Gary Rowett at Oxford United.
7th, we've got Will Still at Southampton.
Yeah. 6th, John Mousinho of Portsmouth.
In 5th, we've got Alex Neil at Millwall.
Yeah, we have. 4th, we've got Liam Manning of Norwich City.
In 3rd, we've got Danny Rawle at Sheffield Wednesday.
2nd's John Eustace of Derby County.
And in 1st place, we've got Kieran McKenna at Ipswich.
And if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll be able to see the individual rankings of Justin and I. So if you're listening to the audio version only of the podcast, go and have a look at the YouTube video now so you can see where we individually put each manager in our list. I cannot emphasize this enough. Justin's rankings are truly something to behold. So pause the video now if you want to keep looking at it because there's definitely a lot to take in. And I'm sure the comment section is going to have a field day with that. But there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the annual manager rankings ahead of the 2025-26 season. We hope you've enjoyed them and found them interesting because that's definitely one way to describe them. While on the theme of managers, we'll be back again on Sunday where we'll be speaking to someone who was managing in the Championship just last season. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.